Very much, Suzanne. Good morning, everyone. Uh, if I could see you all, I would say I could see you, but I can't yet. And we're going to be focusing on President Crow this morning anyway, and the what's going on at ASU. This is our opportunity to basically engage in what has been called the operational and financial review. It was some years ago now when Chad Sampson took a vague concept that Rick Myers and I had and turned it into something that we've been using with each of our three universities now for several years. The concept behind this was for us as a board to spend time focusing directly on a single university. As all of us know, we have responsibility for three universities, both individually, together, and a responsibility for higher education in the state of Arizona. That constitutional responsibility is certainly an important one, but it's important as well with each of our three universities to focus tightly in on this institution, understand better where it's going, ask our president questions, provide commentary, advice, and counsel as we move ahead. We'll be taking a 10-15 break for about 15 minutes, and we'll continue until President Crow and the ASU representatives have completed their discussion with us around 11:45 a.m. today. We'll then reconvene in executive session for two issues, the first of which will be a discussion of the performance of President Michael Crow. And with that, let me introduce President Crow and ask him to proceed. President Crow, welcome this morning.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's great to be here. I have with me the A team backup, the University Council of the ASU, our deans, our other senior officers, and they will help me to get up when I slip and fall, and I appreciate that very much. And they also give me moral support. It's nice to see many of their faces this morning. And Regents, it's nice to see you again today on this beautiful day. I'm going to try to take this block of time that we have and use it well. Because of this particular format that we have, I'm going to pause through different parts of the presentation for some interaction. But I hope that we, in those pauses, Mr. Chairman, can then move on to the next section and then have time to discuss things in my review of assignments and meeting following this meeting. I am going to use slides and a presentation. Each of you also have it. We're not going to spend a lot of time on each slide. They're for the record in many cases as background, if you know what I mean. And so they're also something where we are giving data or outcomes or logic. And what I'm going to do is explain what the slide means. So Martin, if you could pull up the first slide. It's a really important one. It just takes 1 second to do this. Hopefully. If you could enlarge that. Yeah, there we go. So this has been the important thing about this. We, after the board has its chance to comment on this, we use this document, our operational financial review. We use this document as an assessment of how we're doing. And so it's very exciting to us. And this first slide is very important because it expresses two really important things. We are Arizona State University. We are a part of the broader Arizona higher education enterprise. We operate as an enterprise. We're structured as an enterprise, and you'll see more and more of that as we come along. We're also, I just took a look at this last night and this morning, Arizona State University has the same number of degree-seeking college students as the 11-campus Texas A&M system. We have double the number of degree-seeking students of the University of Missouri system across the entire state. We are approaching, we're well past half the size of the University of Texas system with all of their 8 university campuses and 6 health centers. We don't have the 100,000 staff that work at just the health centers at the University of Texas. But we do produce about the same number of degrees as the Texas A&M University system, not just Texas A&M in College Station, but there are 11 campuses, there are 8 agencies, and there are 11 presidents. And what that means then, and the logic here for us, is that we are structured and organized for scale, for impact, for social level impact, social level scale, but we do not operate as a government agency in much the same way as the Texas A&M system does. We operate as an enterprise. That enterprise is driven toward one thing. That enterprise is driven towards the achievement of our charter. The board is very familiar with our charter, was a part of bringing the charter into birth, codified the charter for us, and this is our aspiration. So we operate the ASU enterprise. The picture on the left is just to remind you that it's never done. It's always under construction. So the building on the left is a beautiful building that's being renovated right near Old Main right now, always under construction, always advancing. Enterprise is who we are, how we operate, and how we think. The charter is what we're striving to do. Now, this chart is really worth taking a look at. I won't bore you. There are 5 waves of universities and colleges in the United States, all of which are still healthy and doing well, advancing. It turns out NAU, for instance, is the second wave, a state college, state university, as are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of others that are doing very, very well. The land grant colleges, some that didn't become research universities. The University of Arizona started in the 3rd wave as a land grant, then became a research university. That research university doesn't mean that the 2nd wave schools aren't doing research and aren't doing scholarship. They are. It just means that they're not doing it as a huge part of their very existence. And in the case of some of the 4th wave schools, the principal reason for their existence is research, like Caltech. And then they also have a few students. ASU started as a 2nd wave school, ultimately became a 4th wave school. And I've said this before, and we can spend more time on this, is the prototype for the 5th wave, the emergence of national service universities in the United States. And we can spend more time talking about that. As an emergent national service university, we're focused on social outcomes through individual aspirational empowerment, using massive levels of technology and scalability to advance ourselves into this realm. And so this is the differentiated mechanisms by which we work. Our charter, which I've already mentioned, is what drives us. It is, in fact, our aspiration, inclusive versus exclusive, and the measurement of the student success. And this is really important for regents. Measurement of the student success as the measurement of the success of the institution. Measurement of our research success because of what we've been able to do to advance public value. And then finally, taking responsibility for the communities that we serve, which means, doing all the things that we've been doing in the pandemic and being of automatic service across all fronts. We've used this slide in all of our last OFR reports. The charter is our promise. That is the board's promise and the university's promise to the citizens. We have a responsibility to fulfill the requirements to provide this public education. And what we say there is that this is not something that's conditional upon the actions of the legislature. We're not a legislative body, and we're not an executive body. The university itself is a unique institution in the construct of Arizona, and we are here to fulfill those obligations. We have these design aspirations, which university council members from ASU are. They're probably numb to these by this point because we push them so much. But what it means, for instance, on the right side, fusing intellectual disciplines, it means we just don't accept the standard design of other universities and then just try to implement that. We build what are the schools that we think that we need? What are the programs that we think that we need, in addition to the traditional programs and so forth and so on. And third, from the top on the left, value entrepreneurship. A core element of ASU is that the university will be entrepreneurial itself, as well as drive entrepreneurship forward from its students and its faculty and its staff. And this next concept, I've shown this 2 years before, but I want to make sure, since we've now brought our structure up to match where we're going, as a public enterprise, ASU is at its core an academic enterprise. And over the last 135 years, we've been impacting more and more and more people. And this chart is just meant to mean that the academic enterprise is having more and more effect doing what academic enterprises do, producing college graduates, producing high quality college graduates, driving all things academic forward. But in our particular case, we have decided now to embark on an expansive activity, and that is to, in addition to being a traditional academic enterprise, to organize ourselves around the idea and the concept of, and the actual structure of being a knowledge enterprise. And that means doing something that Arizona was not able to do because of its late evolution among the states. It has no large laboratories. It has no national laboratories. It has no regional laboratories. The federal government didn't plant the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, the Sandia Laboratory, the Brookhaven Laboratory, the Argonne National Laboratory, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Those are all in other places. So we intend to not only have our faculty act as independent academic intellectual creators and entrepreneurs, but also to organize to be capable of helping to lead the way into the knowledge economy of the future. And now, in addition to that, one of the things that we've seen, and the chart is really to show you the scale of the ASU public enterprise on the number of people that we're impacting, the numbers of lives that we're impacting, the numbers of companies that we can work with, the number of companies that we can help create, the number of problems that we can help solve. The learning enterprise is the third realm for ASU. And this is where we've decided that it is incumbent upon us, through the charter that we have, the faculty that has developed here, the tools that we have, the technology that we have, the mechanisms that we have, to take everything that we can configure, everything that we can make available, and make certain that all citizens have access to learning tools and learning assets that help them to move their lives forward, their families forward, pick up the special skill that they need to switch jobs. And so it's something other than formal college. We have 40,000 K through 12 learners in this space right now. We have tens of thousands of other people that are connected to us, and we see this accelerating greatly. We think that one of the issues of the universities and colleges in the past is that so many of them became separate from or separated from the bulk of the population, and then began to be perceived as elitist, snooty, unattainable, untouchable institutions, not with this structure. So the pillars of our public enterprise model is, on the left, the academic enterprise, teaching, learning, creativity, all the things that we're doing. And you can see there in the mixed classroom on the left, where the instructor has some of the students in Zoom and some of the students in the classroom. We have thousands and thousands of classes that are operating this semester in that way, and as well as last semester. The knowledge enterprise, which is the creation of not just the empowerment of individual faculty members, but the creation of teams and groups, like our Global Futures Laboratory, like our Biodesign Institute, like our Interplanetary Initiative, and then learning enterprise, as I just stated. Now that means then, as we evolve the institution, and this is not the first time the Regents have seen this structure, it means then that the core of the core are the three enterprises: academic, learning, and knowledge, supported by a number of support units: educational technology support, enterprise creativity, educational creativity, and so forth and so on. And so it is the case that we now have put in place, effective this semester, the leadership, the three new executive vice presidents for each of the enterprises. And I'm going to pause here, take the screen away, or at least reduce it for a second. Go back to the, whatever you have to do, Martin. There we go. And introduce Nancy Gonzalez, who will be, as of July 1st, the new executive vice president of the university, provost of the university, and chief of the academic enterprise. Little does she know what that last part means. It means that she's going to be worrying about it day in and day out and not sleeping. And so, Nancy, if you could just say hello and introduce yourself very quickly, Mr. Chairman, if this is all right, I want to introduce the three executive vice presidents. And Mark Searle.
Perfect, President Crow, perfect.
All right, thank you. So Mark and Nancy are working together until July as a team. Then Mark will become university professor and get all kinds of fantastic special project assignments, which he doesn't know about yet. And Nancy will move forward. So Nancy, if you'd like to say hello, and then I might say a couple things after you say hello. So.
Yes, absolutely. Hello, Nancy Gonzalez here. Looking forward to being chief and fully realizing what that will entail. I previous to this role, I was Dean of Natural Sciences at ASU, but I really had my career at ASU, and I'm very excited to be stepping into this role.
So I'll just add that Nancy is a native Arizonan, grew up in Miami, went to ASU, our first ASU graduate that has achieved leadership status at this level at ASU. Went to the University of Washington, became one of our fantastic academics coming back to ASU. And as Dean of Science has shamed us all by showing us how to really go out and find directors and school leaders and chairs. And so she's just done a fantastic job. And I hope in the last couple of months, she's learning that the job is simple. There's nothing going on whatsoever. So let's go to Sally Morton, our new Executive Vice President and Chief of the Knowledge Enterprise. Sally comes to us from Virginia Tech, where she was Dean of Science. She'd been at the University of Pittsburgh as a chaired professor prior to that, and was an executive leader of the Research Triangle Organization and the RAND Corporation before that. Stanford PhD, is one of the leading statisticians in the country. So Sally, can you say hi?
Yes, good morning. I'm delighted to be here. I'm new to Arizona. This is the end of my second week on the job and just so excited to be part of the ASU and to lead Knowledge Enterprise. Thank you, President Crow.
Yes, and then lastly, we have appointed Maria Anguiano, who was our Senior Vice President for Strategy and Planning. Prior to that, she was the Executive Vice President of the Minerva Corporation, which is a fantastic new idea for universities. Before that, she was the CFO at the University of California at Riverside. She also was one of the leaders in the University of California's financial operations. And prior to that, spent 10 years in the private sector, also attending Stanford and graduate school. So Maria, can you say hello?
Good morning, Regents. It's wonderful to see you again. President Crow covered my background, but I'll add to say that I'm really excited to work on leading the learning enterprise and really figuring out all the ways that ASU assets and learning offerings can touch every single individual in our community.
And I've mentioned to regents before, but I'll just mention again, Maria is also a regent of the University of California. So she has a deep understanding of the complexities that you face. And sometimes we laugh with Maria about when we talk about you, we say, well, we don't really mean you, Maria. We mean the Arizona regents. And so it's just kind of an interesting internal conversation that we have. So those are our three new leaders. If we could go back to the slides again, Martin. So Martin, it's not letting me advance it. So there we go. So this particular slide is to basically give you some sense of the way things hopefully will work. I will say that this is a design in progress. I see that Chairman Penley is smiling because he knows the complexity of universities and all of the emotionalities surrounded all the things that we're talking about. But at the core of the university is our faculty in the colleges and the schools. The academic enterprise will manage those faculties and deliver all of our academic enterprise functions. The knowledge enterprise will organize, structure, team build, align, move forward, acquire resources, and learning enterprise will draw from that same faculty and asset base of the university, as well as others. I'm not showing this on this chart, other partners that we will bring in with other learning assets. And then all of these things will work, hopefully, seamlessly together. That's my aspiration. Let me just remind you what this slide means. And this is a really important slide. And this will sadly tell you, that board, that your president of Arizona State University is a weirdo, because this is how I think. And so at the core is what we call the knowledge core. And we think that one of the huge errors in a lot of universities that have been stood up around the country, mostly the for-profit universities and colleges, is that they don't have a knowledge core. They don't have a faculty adding to and taking from the knowledge base. And so we draw from that knowledge core. We contribute to that knowledge core. I will tell you, it's a pulsating, growing, rapidly expanding thing. The university, the gold on the bottom, is everything we have drawing from and adding to that core. And all the colors above are how we then express what we do in the teaching and learning realm. So the core of what we do, campus immersion, the dark gray, the new post-COVID campus digital sync is a whole new thing for us. Digital immersion, the blue. I'm not going to walk through all of this other than to just highlight, I've said this before, to regents, the orange is what we call education through exploration, which is where we're putting immense amounts of energy into high intensity technology-based learning for P20 learners, where they can learn through the act of exploration using technologies, and we can once and for all defeat these barriers that are allowing so many students to not graduate from high school, not finish college, not understand their subjects, and so forth and so on. So we decided along the way that we were going to be an anti-fragile organization. We weren't going to be easily broken or damaged, fragile. We weren't only going to be resilient, that was insufficient. We were going to try to find a way to organize ourselves to thrive and grow when exposed to volatility, randomness, disorder, stressors. So, this is the direction that we've been going. ASU has been referred to by some in the industry as a black swan or the black swan. I don't know that that's really fundamentally true, but nonetheless, we're moving on this anti-fragile logic. So before I go to, Martin, let's reduce the screen again. Before I go to COVID management, which I'll go through really quickly, just want to see if there's any comments or questions from regents about the basic fundamental logic of the institution going forward. And we've covered, for the new regents, some of this might be new, but for other regents, this is the core of who we are, which is becoming even more intensely the case, the enterprise model. All right, hearing none, then let's go on to a quick summary. We've spent a lot of time talking about this, so I won't spend very many minutes on this. COVID management, while those slides are coming back up, Martin, basically, we're all in everything that we can do to keep the university fully and comprehensively operating. The COVID management for us then is two parts to it. It's COVID management of ASU. That's a person receiving a saliva-based sample from a PCR test that was invented and developed at ASU that's now being used by 25 sites around the state of Arizona and is testing a measurable number of the citizens of Arizona. And so it's not forwarding, Martin. And so there we go. And so we are throwing all of our weight into everything that we can do. We're running 2 of the state's mass vaccination sites. We're vaccinating 1 person every 7 seconds. We're running 25 testing sites. We have 250 research groups. We've been at this for a year. Responding, reacting, moving back and forth, making adjustments. I'm just walking you through the calendar. A little bit of this is also for the record. We have responses that are focused to students. I want to make note that I hope regents understand, we're fully operational. We're in mode where we're offering classes, both face-to-face and Zoom participation in the classes. We are living in our bubble that we've created a little bit, but we are operational on campus. We have more than 10,000 students living in our residence halls. We have a very low test positivity rate in the range plus or minus of 0.1% of 0.5%. We've modified everything to allow us to keep operating. And that turns out to have been successful. We've been working with faculty and staff. This is a list of a lot of the things that we've been doing: safety protocols, employee assistance. Morgan, what's the number of employees that we vaccinated? Is it between 3,000 and 4,000 already?
Between the vaccinations that we've done, which is a little bit under 2,200, we are aware of another 1,530 employees that have been vaccinated other places. So total of just over 3,700 as of
yes, thank you. And so we were successful at making the case that we were an essential enterprise, frontline workers. And so we've got our staff is being vaccinated. We have ubiquitous testing. We've got thousands of people working on campus, thousands of people working at home, thousands of people coming back and forth. So we are and have been and continue to be fully operational. You've heard a lot about our research activities. I won't go deeper into those. I will point out the guy with the orange glasses in the center is Josh LeBaire, one of our superheroes, leading teams at the Biodesign Institute, helping to develop with other teams the testing technologies, constantly involved in making things happen, standing up whole new technologies, whole new testing systems, really doing great things. And then at the community level, ASU Prep Digital, ASU for You, we're training thousands of teachers vaccinating hundreds of thousands of people, testing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people at the community level, daily epidemiology reports. And so it's important for Regents to understand that the universities, in this case ASU, can surge at a scale that the government can't. The government doesn't have people waiting to do these things. And so we were able to make these things happen in a surge mode. That's a video that we can send to you when you want to watch hundreds of hours of more videos. And then a last point of COVID-19 is it's not going to go away. It's both going to be here forever, and it's a harbinger of other more complicated things. And so we're looking at this as a moment, as an anti-fragile institution, to embrace the complexity, to make the adjustments that we need to make, to be of maximum service to our team, to our community, to all communities, and to make things happen in every way that we possibly can. And again, a lot of this presentation is also for the record. That's sort of where we are. So let's then just highlight what that means a little bit. It means then that we have an entirely new way of teaching and learning. Full immersion is the historic model of the last several thousand years. We now have ASU Sync, which is a hybridization of full immersion. You're there, but you're there digitally and you're interacting, which is different than iCourses, which are our online courses where there is asynchronous interaction. What I can say is that these learning environments are creating for us even more opportunities, particularly, Mr. Chairman, what you and I have talked about, to get more people to find a pathway to get a college degree. And so, because not everyone can be here. So now we know we can reach anyone, anywhere, any scale, any level of individuality. We're going to be launching new degree programs in the ASU Sync mode, where students will come in through that modality. We already have this fiscal year, 85,000 students in our online activities, degree-seeking students. So,
President Crowe, I believe you have a question or comment from Regent Manson.
All right, good. So let's drop the screen again, and we'll take a pause here. Regent Manson.
Thank you. I just had a question about the sync mode. So does ASU actually have students physically sitting in classrooms, or is the sync right now really live through Zoom and that's the modality?
When I taught my class this week on Wednesday morning, I had students in the classroom with me, a handful based on spacing and distancing. Everyone was masked. The other students were coming in by Zoom. Every student in the class and every student that was in Zoom was completely interacting back and forth with each other. And we have thousands of classes that are operating that way. Provost Searle, would you like to comment on Regent Manson's question?
Thank you, President Crowe. Regent Manson, President Crowe describes it appropriately. We have lots of classes. We're literally probably in the 7,000 range, where students can come to class or they can join it remotely through the Zoom link.
Just to be clear, everybody got that number, not 7,000 students, 7,000 classes.
And so there is lots of opportunity for students to choose, and very often, students, sometimes students will show up and sometimes different students will show up. So it allows them to make different choices. And as the pandemic has waxed and waned, more students might have confidence coming, so they will show up, whereas before they might have wanted to come in remotely. So we've been trying to optimize choice for students.
And where we may go, Regent Manson, is what we're seeing is that this optimality that we have now, I should say not optimality, optionality that we have is going to give us more opportunities to engage students in different stages of their life. Students may not have to drop out because of medical issues. They may not have to drop out if mom has cancer and they want to go home and spend time with mom for a few months to help mom. Then they don't have to drop out of school. Where in the past we ran a system where your mother got cancer, well, you're a dropout. You're labeled as a dropout, and you lose your financial aid, you lose your cycle, you lose your time. I mean, you take incompletes in the classes. And so what we're realizing is that we don't have to operate that way. But to our present, we have, as I said, we have over 10,000 students living with us and thousands of students on campus every day, all of our campuses. And so we're operating that way right now.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So moving then away from that and then talking about us as a public enterprise and the evolution of ASU as a public enterprise, a key thing for us is partnerships. So we have a massive partnership with that green lady up in the corner, Starbucks. That's not any longer just the Starbucks College Achievement Program, which has graduated 6,000 students. That's a partnership which has now over 15,000 students in the pipeline, hundreds of thousands of people that are connected to us through our knowledge assets. And I'm not going to walk through each of these. The Air Force, bottom row, second in, Air University is now powered by ASU. Let's take a look at GSV in the upper right. GSV is the Global Silicon Valley Venture Capital Group, which we do an annual meeting on educational technology. We had 30,000 people or something like that attend that meeting this year. Partnership. The Mayo Clinic. And the bottom left, I sent out to Regents the signage that's going up on the new building now done next to the Mayo Phoenix campus, where our alliance is being advanced. We also are working with other private sector affiliates. None of them are universities. None of them have ever been a university. They're all working to help us to advance our teaching and learning assets into other markets. We've talked about Dreamscape Learn in the middle. Doug Becker is the founder and lead investor in a company called Centana. Centana is our mechanism to enhance the way in which we build relationships with universities around the world for our educational content to be developed, as well as pathways to attend ASU. We have as international students. ASU is operating in multiple sites. The Regents are fully aware of this. All of these things are, notwithstanding COVID, going very, very well. We'll be opening in the summer of 2021, hopefully, knock on wood, the building at the bottom left. This is where our new expanded Sidney Poitier New American Film School will be operating here and in Mesa and in Tempe, as well as programs from Thunderbird School of Global Management, a number of master's degree programs. Maria Anguiano, can you give us a little bit of input about the kinds of things that will be going on in the spaces on the right? That's what the spaces will look like on the inside on the right there.
Yes, part of the features of this building has a 200-person event center where Zocalo and many of our schools and colleges and centers will be hosting events and connecting to the community. Lots of, as President Crow mentioned, master's programs, exec ed programs, continuing education programs through our upskilling programs and undergraduate programs across all our schools.
Right, thank you, Maria. So we have academic engagements going on around the world. We don't have anything like Texas A&M. I mean, Texas A&M has one of its campuses in Qatar, a campus of Texas A&M. A campus of Yale is in China. A campus of NYU is in China. A campus is in Singapore. A campus of Duke University is in China. We're not doing any of that. Ours are all through partnerships, alignments, deals, and so forth. And then we also have research activities that are now global. It's just important for everyone just to remember that we have global activities, projects all over the world, people all over the world, funding from all over the world. Let's just take a pause there before we go to performance and accomplishments. And performance is what we're measuring ourselves, how we're doing. So yes, stop share. Any comments or questions from Regents before we move into performance?
I'm not seeing any, President Crow.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So back to the presentation. Thank you. So everyone has seen these. I'm just going to read. We have 4 main mission and goal targets. Demonstrate leadership in, this is the key, as Regent Penley said earlier, demonstrating academic excellence and accessibility. Obviously, in the second one, national standing in terms of academic quality. I can't begin to tell you the quality enhancements of our academic programs. Then to also emerge, and this was not the case 18 years ago when I was appointed. We were not a leading research university 18 years ago. We were an emerging research university. We're now more than an emergent research university. We are emerging as a global center, that is global scale, interdisciplinary research, discovery, and development school. And we think that by 2025, we will be it. And I'll explain that in a second. And then enhance our local impact and our social embeddedness. Now, not very many changes here other than third from the bottom. We have expanded our online and distance education degree-seeking students, and I wish we could do more. This is where we're headed. These are all, by the way, consistent with Regents' goals. The bottom bullet, engage all learners on all levels. kids are not graduating from high school. They're not graduating from high school prepared. What do we have? How can we help them? We've got a lot more going on in that realm. We've made huge progress here in terms of national standing. We want all of our academic programs to be in the top 5% from a quality perspective. Not all are. All are in the top 10%, and we're driving with every appointment that we make, every decision that we make, every way that we structure and organize, because if we become scaled and we lose academic rigor or academic quality, we will have failed. Regent Manson, do you have a question about this specifically? Yeah.
Just very quickly, so how do you measure quality in the top 5%?
Well, it's fuzzy at best, because there are formal measures, there's rankings, there's assessments, there's academic quality assessments. I'm going to call on Law School Dean Doug Sylvester. Doug, how do we measure quality of the law school, and where are we in our development of quality?
Well, there's a number of different ways we do it. Obviously, there is the rankings, and we've achieved our highest ever as number 24 in the country. Among public law schools, we're the number 7 public law school in the country. We're the youngest law school in the top 25. And this is from a historic ranking of sometimes in the 80s to 100 range. So it's been a huge uptick in just the last 10 years. In addition, it's just top 10% of applications. So we're now one of the most sought after law schools in the country. And then lastly, the incoming credentials of our students are now solidly in about the top 7% in the country. We have higher GPAs than traditional schools like UCLA, Georgetown, Columbia, and places like that. So it's just about all of those different areas and just keep moving each one of them farther and faster forward.
And then Doug, could you comment on how we know how our faculty are doing? I mean, we have a first-rate faculty. I was a deputy provost at Columbia University for more than a decade, and I dealt with all of the schools at Columbia, and I can tell you, I mean, our faculty is as good as the faculty anywhere, just taking on a much more complicated mission. So, Doug, how do we measure that?
Well, there's a bunch of ways. One of them is the law school's hired more than 60 faculty members since 2011. That's twice as many as any other law school in the country. By any measure, nationally, we're one of the most highly cited faculties in the country. And then in global citation measurements, ASU Law has been ranked either number 1 or number 2 in the world over the last 3 years through the Times Higher Education rankings and others. So it's an extraordinary bunch. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is, and I think the university should be, is nobody has left. We're not finding that we are being poached, and it's not because they're not getting offers. It's because they love this environment and they love a place that's constantly moving forward and giving them opportunities to really move their careers.
So I'm going to ask incoming provost Nancy Gonzalez to comment on how is it that we measure academic quality? How do we hold the deans accountable for academic quality, or how will you hold the deans accountable for academic quality?
Well, I think we first of all operate from a principle that academic excellence and providing that for our students is one of the most important things that we do. So everything that we develop from in-person classes to online classes is really conceptualized at the highest level. We also hire extremely well. We hire fantastic faculty who come in and accelerate our mission and pursue really outstanding academic goals in this environment of interdisciplinarity, which is very innovative. So it's really part of our entire culture.
So what I would add, Regent Manson, in all of this is that this entire experiment called ASU would be an unmitigated failure if all we did was grow. And if all we did was produce degrees that weren't coming from a faculty of this quality. The objective here in these 2 slides, this is to demonstrate leadership in academic excellence and accessibility. That is considered to be impossible. We have demonstrated that it isn't impossible, which is, I just got an email this morning from one of my longstanding friends who says my name's been nominated for some kind of big national award and I'm just being ripped apart in the process. I said, thanks for letting me know. Thanks for making my day. But why do I get ripped apart? They don't believe this is possible. They believe that we are driving the model to failure because they don't believe that you can do this, turning to this slide, that you can do these two things together. So Nancy, just talk about who you just hired as Dean of Science, as our new directors of our schools in science. And so Regent Manson, this will give you some sense of who we're hiring and how we're bringing them in, and also why they're coming. People are coming because of this mission here. They want to do this and they live for this. We're not hiring. There's no, I used to have this phrase, no dogs, no sleeping dogs. We're not hiring anybody that wants to lay around on the porch. You know, this is where, so Nancy, who have we hired?
So yeah, I'll just say in the natural sciences, we have 6 schools. And up until this past year, only one of those schools had ever had a female in the role of leader. We now have 4 of our 6 schools have women in those leadership roles. And we just brought in 3 fantastic women for the Department of Physics, for the School of Molecular Sciences. We hired a woman again into the School of Earth and Space Exploration, and also our Mathematical and Statistical Sciences school.
So just describe who we hired in math and statistics. And by the way, that at a place like ASU, if you have a crappy math department, you might as well just fold up the whole institution and give up.
Yeah, we hired a top theoretical mathematician from Purdue University to come here and lead our school in math and statistics. And we hired somebody from the University of Colorado, one of the top physics schools in the country, to lead our physics department. She's really not, both of them are outstanding, highly acclaimed scholars. But President Crow is absolutely right. They were really motivated by the mission and the possibility of what they could do here. And the physics chair, for example, she's had her whole life in Colorado. And she said, ultimately, she had to take the job. She said it was just too good of an opportunity to do something that she really values. So yeah, it's been exciting.
And so the way that it works a little bit, Regent Manson, is that in certain academic, and not in all academic fields, they're sort of like, using an analogy, they're like baseball teams. There's franchise players, there's well-known shortstops, there's well-known second basemen. And then so when people move around from team to team, that's a big deal. So maybe one of the deans want to jump in and just mention the last franchise player that they hired. Any of the deans? I've queued up the names. I'm going to call on you. So.
I'll jump in. Hired Jeffrey Borman from University of Wisconsin-Madison. Tremendous statistician coming in, research, IES grants, terrific guy.
And this is Carol Basile, who's the dean of the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College, and has come in and in the last few years has transformed. In fact, I'm just going to pick on you just a little bit so that Regent Manson, you get a sense of what we're doing here. So Carol now has been given this completely re-engineered teachers college, having done away with our old model. We've gone up in academic rankings. We've gone up in qualifications of our students and our graduates. Just Carol, just give 2 minutes on what you've been able to do as a stellar dean, really taking this college forward and how different this is than your old deanship in Missouri.
Okay, well, there's no comparison. Just because the opportunities are bigger and as I always say, the dance floor is bigger. We are now creating what I think colleges of education need to do, which is to transform the education workforce. We talk about this as the next education workforce, and it is rethinking teachers, who they are, what they do, what they know, how they work together in teams. It's about breaking down the one teacher, one classroom model, creating new opportunities for leaders, and also building more opportunity for the community, including parents and others, to now learn the skills of teaching for all kids.
Well, so what I'll just add to that, and this is, I think, really important, and I appreciate the question very much, Regent Manson, because it gives a sense. I know you're concerned about how do we do this? How do we measure this? How do we hold ourselves accountable? So all the things that the regents hear me talk about at the university level, all those same kinds of changes and activities are occurring at all of the college levels and at the unit levels as they're evolving, just as Dean Basil just said, just as they're evolving to become the prototype, state-of-the-art, scaled, unbelievably academically qualified. How are we doing on rankings in teaching, in education colleges now? Carol?
15.
15th, and that's out of hundreds.
1,600.
1,600, we're in the top 15, while doing everything radically different. So next slide here, and there's a big blue thing in the middle there that gives Sally Morton heart palpitations and me heart palpitations, which is that we keep upping our game. And so this is how do you make ASU, Arizona State University in Metropolitan Phoenix, an interdisciplinary research, discovery, and development center that the rest of the world knows about, hears about, which is already the case. We have our Global Futures Laboratory. We have other partnerships that we're trying to build, other things that we're launching, other things that we're doing. And we just raised our game, our goal, enhancing our research competitiveness to more than $1 billion in annual research expenditures, which I think if we got there would make us the #1 non-medical school research institution on the planet. Now, that's an extremely challenging goal. We're only about 66% of the way to that goal now, maybe 68%, depending on how you count it. But with partnerships, with alignments, with new initiatives, with some of the opportunities that we see happening right now with the expansion of microelectronics research in the United States, the expansion of all things related to a new green economy, with the expansion of deeper understandings of public health and public health outcomes and mental health and social well-being, all these things moving forward, we think that this will be extremely difficult to attain, but it is attainable. And then lastly, enhancing our local impact and social embeddedness. So let's just take the third bullet there. And you can see the trademark symbol there. So 21st century learners, universities in the 20th century were selfish. They only educated students that arrived, that came. And then they had some night schools and some night programs and some continuing education programs. We think we need to do a lot more than that, drawing from the talent of our faculty, drawing from all of our assets, including the library, and it's a tremendous and unbelievable asset. And then making all of those assets available with other assets that we curate and assemble, making those available to any learner anywhere. So I'm not going to spend any time on these, but I grew a little obsessed about this. I mean, I still hear today, people say to me, well, you don't look like a partier and you don't really drink. So how can you be the president of the world's largest party school? I'm like, you don't really want to know what's going through my mind, but it's really bad things about that person and horrible things that I want to say to them and ways in which I want to injure them in terms of, with words. And so here's how we're doing. So these are little tiles about how we're doing. Tremendous. Look at the second from the right on the top 10% athletics program, top 10% of institutions in the world, #1 in innovation. I'm not going to, what this basically says to you all as regents is, you got a real university here achieving significant goals. One of the best colleges for veterans, upper right, #3 in the US for management education, top 10 best fine arts program. This means that parents and citizens and families and companies can understand that this is one of the best universities in the country. Now, how are we doing in terms of achievement, student success, research? And then on the right, I just want to remind everyone, that little project that you see on the right, all those buildings there, well, about 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 4 of those are up and all the rest are going to be built. So someday somebody's going to just go, what happened here? Well, that's the Novus Innovation Corridor, which we're in the middle of constructing. Not in the middle, I mean, we're underway. We've got companies moving in. We've got hotels built and operational, apartments going in. We've got a huge interest in our projects and where we're going and where we're headed. So student success, how are we doing? Well, Regent Dave, there's your picture in the middle. Tell everybody what you won and how you did it.
Absolutely. Hi. Yes. So we led this team, part of the NASI lab to lead to win the X Prize Next Gen Mass competition. So the goal here was essentially identify the pain points with common complaints around using masks, wearing masks, and then design a solution that eliminates those pain points. And we brought together a team. It was the same team that took part in ASU's PPE response network, crowdsourcing over 1,400 pieces of 3D printed PPE across the valley.
So to get it right, Regent Dave, so you and a group of other slacker students somehow got together between your intensive partying and were able to win a national prize, which came with $500,000 as a prize for a new mask technology that you conceptualized, designed, built, and manufactured. Is that true?
That is precisely correct. Yes,
who's
sir.
who's the oldest person in that picture?
So the oldest person would be John Patterson. He's the one in the top middle, and he is a master's student in his second year of his program. Everyone else is undergraduate students, with the highest age of the undergraduate student being a junior, which would be myself.
And are any of those students? Those students are all they're all geniuses, or are they just regular humans?
I'd say that I'm the only one that would be a regular human. Everyone else on that team is certainly a genius, but it takes great effort to bring together a bunch of collaborative and great minds and, make impact like this. And so we're glad to have been able to do it.
So I want Regents to understand there is no competition on the planet from any university on the planet, in any topic on the planet, in any subject on the planet, that ASU students either haven't won, they finish with a prize, or they can win, period. That is an unbelievable thing that I just said. And I want you to look at who these students are, their age, their diversity, their backgrounds. We have built a university capable of producing students that can operate at an unbelievable level. This is our number of, this is undergraduate enrollment. You can see that that's continuing to move forward in very significant ways, because our mission, as assigned by you, the board, is to enhance the number of graduates and to move the society and the economy forward. Graduate enrollment has also outpaced goals. In both these cases, the goals are the current metric is the dotted line. You can see where we are. We're well above goals, accelerating against goals. You can see in the past, like here from 03 to 09, we're just like, I don't know what we were doing. Must have been lazy back then. Just really incapable of moving these things forward. But I also want you to see the continued expansion of the university and the diversity of the university. So gray here means white students, not gray means students of color. So beautiful colors here, illustrating the actual diversification of what historically was a white institution. No more. No more. At scale and evolving. This is, you all as regents asked us, and by the way, let me go back to this slide. And doing this. With this. Nobody is doing that. Nobody is doing that at the scale that we're doing that. So this thing about accessibility, and I sometimes I almost go internal. I have a part of my brain that's just called apoplexy. And so that part of my brain just goes apoplectic all the time when people say, well, we're not accessible. You can see where we were in 2002 in terms of first-year students by family income. And you can see where we are in the fall of 2020 for first-year students by family income. So we have 2,900 first-year students from family incomes under $40,000 a year. Process that. Family incomes under $40,000 a year. And so the institution is more accessible than it's ever been. And some of our adversaries and opponents are clearly unable to understand this chart. Take a look at this chart. Pell Grant recipient enrollment at ASU, now 40,491 undergraduates. I don't know what it was in 1990. Oh, I guess I can see 1,000. A 40-fold increase and continuing to accelerate. First generation student enrollment, just from 2002, up by a factor of 4. 4-fold increase. The key is, though, not the growth or the diversification. It's the quality of the student product, the quality of the student outcome, the measured quality of the student outcome with growth and with diversification. Financial diversification like this slide on Pell Grants. First generation diversification like this slide. Now, it's important to take a look at this slide, and Cheryl Hyman, are you on the call?
Yep, I'm here.
So Cheryl is our Vice Provost for Strategic Academic Partnerships and coordinates our activities with the community colleges. So Cheryl, tell the regents in very short form, what are we doing here? We must be sleeping, right? I mean, we've got a lot more transfer students, and we've got transfer students compared to what? What is this slide telling us?
Yeah, not too much sleep, but that's okay. So what I want to tell the regents first, and thanks President Crow, is just one statistic so you understand the problem that ASU is trying to solve for nationally. So of the 5.5 million students in community colleges nationally, about 80% of them start in pursuit of a baccalaureate degree. However, 6 years later, fewer than 1 in 6 will have achieved that goal. So that's the problem that we're solving for. In the last couple of years, we've increased our focus on developing technology to support learners while they're enrolled in community colleges. So we have a transfer tool that we've developed that's aiming to minimize the credit loss and reduce their time to completion. It has over 400 articulated term by term prescribed pathways for both online and immersion to all of domestically accredited institutions, including all Arizona institutions. So students can sign up for these pathways and track their progress, and our colleges can interact with them while they're at the community colleges. We currently have 800,000 course equivalencies from these institutions with a goal of reaching 1 million.
So let me interrupt for a second. I want regents to understand. So we have designed 800,000 course equivalencies from community colleges so that you can have automatic transfer to ASU to speed things on while working with these community colleges. And Cheryl, just describe for everybody your last job before you came here.
I was chancellor of the City Colleges of Chicago.
And what was your biggest challenge there?
Culture, just change and innovation, making change, challenging the status quo, doing the things that we're doing at ASU. The biggest challenge is the culture and having a culture that embraces change. And
a culture that embraces success rather than accepts non-success as a part of the culture. So thank you, Cheryl. So yeah, so then I'm getting a click there, Martin. So next slide is geographic diversity. So, you know, we're hosting international students, number 6 for hosting overall. I think we're 2nd for public universities. This continues to be a key market valuation of ASU, a key transformative opportunity for Arizona and ASU, and a key economic driver for the success of ASU. Very, very important. This is a very important slide. Senior Vice President Rich Stanley, what does this slide tell us? And by the way, regents should be aware, no one knows that I'm calling on them. They just have to be ready for the quick audible.
So, I mean, clearly we have, after a period of time of having to increase tuition as a response to some of the earlier financial crises, we have managed to find a way to flatten out our tuition increases and continue to support the growth of the institution in all the areas that President Crow and the other deans have been talking about. Particularly interesting is the complete flattening over the last 3 years, and I think there won't be much likelihood of a substantial increase in fall of 21 either. We also don't look at the other 2 universities when we decide how we're going to set our tuition increases. But the fact is that ASU now is the least expensive university among the 3 publics at the undergraduate level for resident students.
Well, in fact, it's fair to say it's the least expensive institution to achieve a bachelor's degree from that is a university. So
the other thing that's important to point out here is that these are the list, quote unquote, list prices. Very few students at any of the 3 universities actually are paying the prices that are shown.
Yeah, I've got that slide coming up. So thank you, Rich. And so here's where we are in terms of tuition, resident tuition, non-resident tuition, and international student tuition among the Pac-12 schools, the Pac-12 public universities. And so we think that we're doing very, very well. This is how we're doing relative to affordability. Again, 42,034 resident undergraduate students. If your family makes under $50,000 a year, you can see where the line is relative to mandatory tuition and fees. That means that you have grant support, not loan support, grant support covering the cost of your tuition. So this notion of we're not approaching and you can look how many students there are, by the way, within those categories, 17,000, many students within that. We are fantastically able to deliver on as low a cost as possible. And I will say that, and we'll come back to this with Regents, it's a crushing thing to try to do this. Crushing thing, because we have to generate the revenue to make this happen. Retention rates and graduation rates have continued to rise and are moving forward. And even now we're going to see continued forward progress. Graduation rates continuing to rise, even with growth and with diversity and taking on more students. If I wanted us to really rapidly accelerate these two numbers, all I have to do is not admit students that had B's on their transcript from high school and try not to admit too many kids that come from families with no money. We'll do good. These things will curve up like you've never seen. And we all of a sudden will become superheroes. Look at that great university that ASU has built. These two numbers, retention and graduation, have been accelerating with expansion, diversification, and empowerment of students from low-income families. So among the University Innovation Alliance schools, this is where our graduation rates, our four-year graduation rates are. We do put the blue dot and the red dot on there just so people can understand, you know, where our B average high school students are and where our A average high school students are. Texas, by the way, only admits A average high school students. Here's the number of degrees that we've awarded. This is one of our principal assignments. So we're up now approaching, we're above 30,000, or right at and exceeding 30,000 degrees. So, and that's continuing to accelerate. Regents have asked us, and the state has asked us, to focus in particular on high demand fields, STEM fields, health fields, and education fields. You can see what we've done there just in the last 10 years, from 5,400 to 11,296. Tremendous progress. And this affects everything. This affects companies that locate here, affects the local labor market, affects everything. ASU degrees awarded in STEM fields, 1,800 in 2002, 7,000 last year. Huge transformation of where we are, particularly in the bachelor's degree side.
President Crow, you have
Yes.
a question or comment from Regent Duvall?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, Regent Duvall.
That's right. Thank you, Chair Penley. Thank you, President. Two slides back. I want to look at the in-state. Yeah, in-state, there it is. In-state resident graduations. Obviously, that's not growing at the rate the others are. What can you tell us? What do we need to do in order to, I mean, you guys have been phenomenal at sort of taking on responsibilities around the world, around the country, doing all these innovative things, but getting this attainment number in Arizona up is such a gigantic requirement for us to compete in the 21st century. What do you know about why that number isn't moving faster, and what can we do to address it?
Yeah, so two comments, very, very astute observation. So Arizona has one of the 5 or 4 lowest college going rates in the country. The reason that it has that is that the universities, one, there's never been a financial model or a financial pathway. So Arizona is one of 4 or 5 states that has no state-based financial aid, no understanding for a family to have in middle school that they have a pathway. So we provide the financial aid, but a student doesn't know about our financial aid models until they're applying to college. So they're not thinking about it. It's not inculcated in their logic in middle school. You really need families to start thinking about and committing to college in the 7th and 8th grade, that they're going to be able to go to college. And so in the 7th and 8th grade, they need to move in that direction. I think, excuse me, the other thing that's happening is, there's a complex anti-education logic in Arizona. And so we're still fighting that and fighting that hard. I will say that many of the students that come to be on campus with us do stay in Arizona. And so that's important to note also. I'm going to ask Provost Searle to comment on the issue of resident enrollment, and then also Kent Hopkins, who's our Vice President for Enrollment Management. So Mark first, and then Kent.
Well, first, thank you, President Crow and Regent Duval. Exactly what President Crow just described, we have underway. We have just launched a process to reach to 8th graders, an entire effort involving our teams from educational outreach and student services and from the academic enterprise to ensure that students start to ideate about going to college earlier, including understanding the finances. And we have a partner company that helps students see that, and students can earn micro scholarships all the way along the way, plus understand what federal financial aid looks like, and that the university also has aid. And so we believe that this can ultimately be a game changer in the state. The other side of it is, of course, that just as a statistical matter, the volume of students growing in the state is not nearly as great as the volume of students we can attract from the nation and internationally. So on a proportional basis, you're going to see a smaller gain within the state.
So Kent Hopkins, anything you'd like to add?
Sure. Thank you, President Crow, and thank you, Provost Searle. Regent Duval, as we discussed, I think it was last week in our educational attainment meeting, we have had some successes in bringing more first-year students from the state of Arizona here. So in the fall of 2015, we enrolled 6,400 Arizona students in our first-year class. This year, we welcomed 8,300. So we have had increases. It's extremely important, as I shared with you last week, we need to do better. We need to connect with those students who meet university standards, who aren't going anywhere. We have to help our citizens understand the transformative power of education. We've got to break through that. And then in partnership with my colleague, Cheryl Hyman, we've got to connect with our students who start in the community college earlier. And we need to have them think of a vision just past enrolling in that community college for the first term. They need to be thinking about what their degree will be when they finish. And I would say finally, to my colleague, Phil Regier, there are a lot of Arizona citizens here, Regent Duval, who are older than 18 through 25, who have not completed their degrees. So we have to help those citizens understand the value behind degree completion. Thank you.
And we think there's about 1 million of those individuals in Arizona. So very quickly, Mr. Chairman, I'll go through research before the break and then come back.
President Crow, just a quick comment or question from Regent Rusk. I'm sorry.
Yes, Regent Rusk.
Thank you, Chairman Penley. President Crow, to build off a little bit from Fred Duval's question, also in Arizona, we have this issue of the K-12 system churning out students who aren't performing well in mathematics or in science. So how do you kind of address the discrepancy in the educational gap for some of the students who are coming out of those high schools, particularly from Title I, rural high schools, et cetera?
Well, Regent Russ, thank you for the question. And we could have an entire briefing just on that. You know, one of the things that we've done is we've stepped back now to build tools to help students to overcome the limits of their schools themselves in math and science in particular, which makes them underprepared or completely unprepared to come to the university. And so we're doing that. We're connecting with K-12 schools throughout Arizona, throughout the country. We're advancing new math tools, new learning tools, so forth and so on. I don't know if Julie Young is on this call. Julie, are you on this call? And if not, Jim Rund. Jim, just describe what we're doing at the point of impact of what Regent Rusk is talking about.
Well, significant effort in the K-12 space, and an important point that you make relative to math outcomes. I don't know if Superintendent Hoffman is on the call, but we have partnered with her extensively, obviously on the teacher training initiative, the virtual training initiative, but also offering a pilot program to improve math outcomes for K through 12 students. We know that the transition from 8th to 9th grade is a critical point and a clear benchmark that ultimately determines success for students We've done extensive work in the Yuma Unified School District, for example, improving the outcomes for their 8th, 9th grade transition the last 3 years using our digital format. They've been very pleased with that. And that's what we're in discussion with Superintendent Hoffman regarding to improve these outcomes statewide.
So what my last comment, Regent Rusk, is that what we finally have done is we've broken down the barrier of the university, thinking that somehow K-12 was not a realm that we should be working in other than teacher preparation and research. And now we're working across the entire continuum, which we weren't doing before. And I think to Regent Duval, to your concern, I think that we will accelerate the number of qualified students ready to come to the universities. And then I'll also add that we have greatly expanded the number of people in these what we call pathway programs. You are able to earn your way into the university. And so we do find more resistance in Arizona to some technological solutions than in other places, but we're working on that and working with people. So Regent Rusk, we can spend more time talking about that. Regent Penley or Chairman Penley, let me get through researcher really quickly, which should put us on track for the break. So research is one of our core activities. We've got everything going on. So everything related to COVID. We have instruments on 2 of the objects arriving at Mars right now, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, a spaceship. We have an instrument on that. We're on the Perseverance rover. We've got energy research, everything that you can possibly imagine across thousands of projects, 2,000 plus research groups and tens of thousands of people that are involved in research. Here's some new world-class faculty. We already talked about Donatella and others. You can get a sense of who these folks are. Neil Woodbury, just describe what Robert on the right is going to be doing in 30 seconds or so.
So thanks, President Crow. So Dr. Kendall is going to be working on our development of the CXFEL, which is our coherent free electron laser system, a fantastic system in the basement of one of our biodesign buildings, which is going to allow us to take movies of complex molecules, look at quantum behavior on surfaces, and a whole variety of other things. And he's a fantastic physicist that has joined us to lead that effort.
Right. So we're still continuing to do well. We are changing our goal. The 815 goal, you can see on the side there, has been expanded to 1 billion. And so, Sally, in short form, how does that make you feel, that new goal?
It's aspirational. I think we can do it. I think, as we've mentioned before, I mean, these metrics, this is a dollar value, which is important, but we also have to remember the impact and the other metrics that are important in our research, the impact in our community in terms of economic development. You spoke about the Novus corridor, for example, a few minutes ago, President Crow. So 1 billion, it's there, it's a number, it's a nice round number, and we'll go for it, but it's also important to know that we want to impact our community, our students, as they go out into the world via economic development and partnerships as well.
Thank you. So we continue to be the fastest growing research university in the country. Indiana added 2 units to their school, so they shot up there in FY14, as you can see by the addition of new assets. So we're doing very well. We have continued to be a leader in technology transfer. I'm just trying to give regents a sense that, you know, we're not letting up. COVID doesn't cause us to let up. COVID doesn't cause us to fail. COVID doesn't cause us to not be able to move forward. Just the opposite. SkySong Innovations have been raising money for spin-out companies, making things happen, all going on right now. And then this data is just out, which is the NSF, National Science Foundation HERD rankings 2019. It's a lag indicator. You can see any logo you see on here is someone we beat in that category. The really important one on this page is the second category, total research expenditures among institutions without a medical school, of which there's 759. You've seen all this before. But it's important to sort of see how we're doing. You can see how if you take out Stanford in the bottom, non-medical school expenditures, Stanford, U of A, Rutgers, Columbia, my old school, Ohio State, we're beating all these schools with our non-medical research expenditures. Let's just take a look at geological and earth sciences, the way this chart works. 353 schools are measured by the NSF having some expense activity in that area of research. We're number one in anthropology, number 18 in humanities, number 26 among 405 research institutions called public universities. Number 1, and this is a really important thing, the second one, transdisciplinary science. Number 1 among 247 active participants. Number 12 ahead of Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, USC. Regents, this chart does change. This is not the same chart as you've seen before. Just trying to give you a sense of how ASU is doing while producing 30,000 graduates, while having 40,000 plus Pell eligible undergraduates, while having a student body coming into our first year class that's 52% non-white. These other schools don't have those dimensionalities for the most part, or at all. Economics, psychology, business. Let's take a look at NASA. 3rd out of 441. Engineering, 20th, more than Cornell, Rensselaer, Rutgers, Minnesota. Education. And let's look at NSF expenditures. More than Harvard. More funding here from the National Science Foundation than Harvard, Chicago, Hopkins, Penn, NC State, or our older sister. Now, our older sister is on here because they are a fantastic research university, a world-class research university. And if we beat them in a fair competition, we want to note that, because that means we're growing up too. We're doing fine also. Computer science. I won't go through all of these. Math, DOE, law. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any other questions. I think I saw Regent Taylor Robeson had her hand up there for a second.
Indeed, she did. Go ahead, Regent Taylor Robeson.
Yeah, and you guys were way too quick for me before the research slides. And we could do this offline, but it goes with Regent Duvall's question on Arizona residents. And you'd mentioned pathways. I know you have multiple different pathways that you are pursuing to increase the number of those students. Can you talk about one or two, or we could do this later, because I don't want to take up too much time, and I know there's a lot.
Well, we have a lot of pathways. Why don't Maria Anguiano, why don't you talk about a pathway optionality that we have? And I don't know if Sue Quant is on or not, and if not, then Mark or Nancy. So start with Maria.
So we have our earned admissions pathway, which is a set of open scale courses, affordable, high quality, self-paced, so students can flexibly take the courses. And then once they meet if they take 8 if they're younger, 4 if they're on the older side, they're able to gain admission to ASU, proving that they can learn at the college level. So instead of just holding them to a certain GPA or a certain set of classes, we give them an opportunity to show that they're ready to work at the college level. And so with that kind of beginning set of assets of our set of earned admissions courses, we're actually able to then Lego them into different types of pathways, so students actually feel better. Instead of it just being a one pathway, we can now take a series of courses and say, okay, these 4 are more STEM oriented, these 4 are humanities oriented, et cetera, and kind of appeal to the students like where they actually want to learn, which makes them feel like an easier pathway into the university.
So that's one pathway. So I don't know if Sue Quant's on, but Mark or Sue Quant or Nancy.
Yeah, I'm on the call.
Sue Quant is our Vice Provost and Dean of University College and is one of the leading experts in academic innovation around the country. So Sue Quant.
Thank you, President Crow. And as Maria just mentioned, our goal is to look at variety of these combinations so that students have the choices. So here for student success, both they're sort of clarifying their intent and clarifying their sense of purpose to matter. Those kinds of motivations keep students on the path towards following a college degree and graduation. So as long as we can personalize the path and then offer personalized support to students at scale, we can create pathways where they'll be successful. And that's very much at the core of the work that we are doing. Thank you.
And I'll also add, who would like to comment on the Starbucks College Achievement Program as it relates to our Pathways program there?
I think Phil should respond to that.
Phil, you want to comment on that?
Sure. The Starbucks, we have a special version of.
So Phil, by the way, so Phil is the CEO and the leader of Ed Plus at ASU and University Dean for all of our online education activities. So.
Yes, and so we started earned admission in earnest really with a program with Starbucks called Pathway to Admissions, because we were finding that about 1 out of 5 Starbucks partners were not eligible for admission to ASU under the traditional standards. We've had over 5,000 students participate in that. We've admitted close to, I think at this point, it's 11 or 1,200. The interesting thing about that program is, even though these students were not admissible by our standards, when they are admitted to the university and compete against the other students, on average, they outperform. And that's because they've been able to show their competence. The first time they went to school, they weren't successful. Now they're 28 years old, and they're very different learners, and they're very much more mature. And when they're very serious about their studies, and they're able to perform at a very high level as students once they get into the university.
President Crow, I would also add that we also have pathways for all of our community college students, whether in state or out of state. They can join pathways so that they know exactly what they have to take at the community college, so that their transfer is seamless and that they can easily move into their major once that they arrive at ASU.
And Mark, when you came here as a dean and when you were provost of the then position at the West Campus, could you do all that then?
No, that was an idea, not an implementation at that point.
And so the reason for mentioning that, Regent Taylor Robeson, is that some of this is new for us also. We've had to build this capability. We've had to change the culture. We've had to open up the culture, build the technology, tools, and assets, and so forth. So we can talk more about this offline. And back to Regent Duval's comment, we're putting a lot of energy into Arizona. We need to put more energy into Arizona. And we're doing that at multiple levels now, K through 12, all the way through the university. So, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Penley, I'm prepared to turn back to you for the break.
Yeah, I think we should take a break, but just a comment or two, President Crow, before we do so. For those of us, and Mark Searle and I are part of that group, we've known this university for a long time. And all of you who are part of ASU should just feel a sense of pride and accomplishment in what we've listened to and seen so far this morning. This is really, as President Crow says, an excellent university. It's driven by excellence. It's driven by its commitment of service. It's driven by the diversity and the financial aid that has become a part of that. The interdisciplinary research just was not there 20 years ago. It is there now, and people may not believe that, they may not see it, but it's quite real. Just to comment on teacher education. ASU 20 years ago, before Michael Crow, it was an also ran at best in teacher preparation. Today, that has been transformed. And that's just a single example, along with the excellent faculty that you've hired in so many parts of the university. I just tell you, as chairman of the board and a member of the Regents, I'm just very pleased to see what we've heard about so far, and look forward to the remainder of the presentation and discussion, President Crow, after we take a 15-minute break. So why don't we return at 10:40 and get right back underway? Is that all right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Please proceed, President Crow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to carry on now to the next phase, I really want to now focus in on what we call enterprise management, the management of Arizona State University as a public enterprise. Just to remind everybody what a public enterprise is, it means that we are owned by the public, overseen by the public's representatives, the board. We have a public purpose. We do not seek profit, but we do not operate as an agency. We operate as an enterprise, and there's a long literature on public enterprises, and we have emerged as this kind of institution. And then just to remind you again about scale relative to this picture, this is looking at the evolution of one of our multiple innovation campuses or innovation districts, innovation zones. This is the Novus zone. I won't spend much time on this, maybe a little bit, but everything that's in white is going to be built. Many of them have already been built. Several of them have already been built. And so this is the scale of one of our innovation campuses that's a part of the ASU public enterprise. So next slide. I'll do it. Yeah. So this is an important slide. This is revenues from 2002 until now. You can see that we've gone from below $1 billion of revenue to approaching $4 billion of revenue, where we are now in the present year. State appropriations are in black. All other non-black resources are something other than state appropriations. You'll see the blip at the bottom, FY21 federal fiscal stabilization funds, the CARES Act funds, and other funds that we have gotten, and so forth. The point of this is, and this is really, really, really the thing I'm the most concerned about among all things, and we can talk about this in my review of assignments. The institution is of the people, by the people, and for the people, but not funded by the people through appropriations. And it makes life exciting, challenging, I think transformatively positive. The black at the bottom of this graphic is not big enough. We do need some additional investments related to students having access to the institution. And it's also the case, and I think worth noting, importantly worth noting, that agency type oversight, agency type governance is not particularly effective in this arena. And the regents know this because you're overseeing us and you know how we're doing, what we're doing and where we're going, and you can see where things are going and so forth and so on. But to give you some sense of this, the university is moving forward, that is to this section, enterprise management. This is a public enterprise seeking resources to achieve its objective from non-political sources, seeking resources to achieve its objectives. Now, our financial position, our net position, has more than doubled since 2008. I attribute this to the genius of Morgan Olson, who's really come in and helped the institution to mature. And so Morgan Olson, EVP and CFO of ASU, can you give a sense to the regents of where we are on this chart?
Sure. So essentially what this reflects in financial terms is the value of the university proper and its component units, including the ASU Foundation. Some of you probably noted that we recently completed our capital campaign, which was a major factor in us hitting $1 billion in terms of our long-term investment or endowment pool. Very important long-term asset base for the university that will generate revenues ad infinitum. We essentially have been able to do a good job of maintaining the financial strength of the university through some pretty trying times. Obviously, this incorporates the period of the Great Recession. And more recently, as Dr. Crow indicated, essentially the business model of the university is really transformed. State investment is important, but has been essentially static in nominal terms over the last decade. And of course, if one adjusts for inflation, that probably means that in real spending power terms, it's declined over 20% in that time period. So our ability to generate revenues from many of the things that Dr. Crow and others have been talking about is really critical to maintaining the financial equilibrium over time of the university as we expand the things that Arizona State University is doing. And I think what this shows is that we've been able to be successful in maintaining that asset base while doing many new things to achieve our mission. And that's going to be important to us for all kinds of reasons, including access to external capital as time goes on.
And then Morgan, just quickly relative to that, it's important for regents to know in the middle of COVID in fiscal year 21, we had some confusion yesterday about what was fiscal year 20 and what was fiscal year 21. We're in fiscal year 21, about to enter fiscal year 22, because we count from July 1st forward. We've taken some credit issuances and debt refinancing during COVID. How's our credit rating, given the industry has been in many ways decimated? How is our credit rating?
Yeah, several of the rating agencies have put the industry, if you will, higher education, on negative outlook as a result of some of these pressures that we've all been feeling and discussing. We have been able to maintain our Standard & Poor's AA rating. We're AA2 in Moody's. And so we've been able to maintain our credit ratings over this time period. Right now, cost of capital is relatively low. That's important to us going forward here. We finished up last fiscal year 20, and June 30, 2020, with a modest increase in net position, about $6.7 million. The budget that the regents approved for fiscal year 21 actually anticipated a modest reduction in our net position for the year.
You're on mute, Morgan.
Sorry, not sure why I dropped off there, but what I was trying to say is that as a result of some changes since the board approved its budget for fiscal year 21 that anticipated a reduction in that position, there have been some positive factors, enrollment, and not the least of which has been federal stimulus funds. So we are anticipating we'll actually have an increase in net position in fiscal year 21 again.
Now, I just want everyone to just pause right there. The institution is not an agency. The net position is not a measurement of how agencies necessarily manage themselves. Director Arnold, who's been the state budget director and so forth and so on, understands agency enterprise differences. And so our net position is through management, through Morgan and his team and our executive team at the university. We're managing our way through this. It is immensely complicated. We're also managing costs. We use 21% fewer resources per degree. This is up to date. This is FY 2018 data. It's even better now. Purdue, who's another wave 5 university, is way over there in the blue zone, meaning spending too much. This is where we are in terms of our spend. And so this goes to this notion of how are we doing against other public, very high research universities. You can see the University of Arizona, just our sister, just comparing our scale, our method, our way of doing things gives us advantage relative to keeping our costs down. And so, in a sense, and I've said this for some time, I don't get among many people, we don't get a reaction to this. We're running what people imagined they wanted universities to be: scaled, adaptable, flexible, entrepreneurial, cost-efficient institutions being made available to the entirety of the public.
President Crow, you have a comment or question from Regent Manson.
Yes, Regent Manson, thank you.
Yeah, and I apologize if this is related to the last screen. Morgan, can you just talk a little bit about the change in relationship between the restricted and unrestricted funds? If you look historically, a lot more unrestricted funds available to the university.
Yes, thank you, Regent Manson. Great question. If you look at 2015 there, you see the introduction of a new color on the bar chart here, the green at the top, which is actually an offset. Generally accepted accounting principles for governmental entities and colleges and universities, public ones, was changed effective for that year, which required us to put several liabilities that actually are held by others. So in this case, the major one would be the defined benefit retirement program, Arizona State retirement system. A portion of that on our balance sheet. So it's an offset to what would otherwise be unrestricted net assets. This chart is intended to show comparability over this time period. So that's how we're depicting that. So our unrestricted net position then is reduced by the amount of that liability each year. And that moves around with all kinds of actuarial assumptions, et cetera, that are honestly kind of challenging to follow. But what it's intended to reflect is that we will have the responsibility for making contributions to post-retirement health insurance, and retirement programs that our employees benefit from when they retire, and that we make contributions for on an annual basis.
And obviously, Regent Manson, you know better than probably all of us that this is an accounting presentation as opposed to a cash or operating position, and so we can spend more time talking about that also. But thank you for noting that. So this is relative to how we're doing in terms of degrees awarded. We use 14% fewer resources than universities. This is just taking out those that don't have medical schools to let you know how we sit with those. This is an important chart on cost discipline. So this is cost as opposed to price. And so, Rich Stanley, just explain where we are now in FY21 and where we end up in FY26, because we've contained our costs a long time ago. particularly against any inflationary adjustment. So Rich, in 30 seconds.
Yeah, so there's a very specific measure of a subset of the expenses that we get report that the university incurs that are considered to be educational general expenses. They generally take out research and auxiliaries as sort of the simple version of that, and there's an ABOR definition for that. We have, as the graph shows, our E&G expenses per FTE have increased slightly, but not anywhere near as fast as inflation has increased. And this has more to do probably with the expansion of the scale of the numbers of students that we're working with than it does on the absolute control of expenses. We are able to educate more students without increasing the numbers at the same rate that we're increasing by the numbers of students. And that's really what this graph is showing. And the expectation is that over the course of the next number of years that we will be able to continue to increase the numbers of students without increasing the expenses at the same rate. I think that the inflation number of 2% is obviously a number that's going to be interesting to see whether we ever get inflation again. But right now, that's simply what that shows, and this is derived from that.
Thank you, Rich. So the point here to the regents is this goes to the management of the institution against our not only our operational goals, but our financial goals, our cash acquisition goals, our investment goals, and so forth and so on. The next few slides just sort of put us into the modality of why we're substantially different than a lot of other institutions. The red line is the peer median of the number of employees per 100 FTE students at all the universities that are our ABOR peers. We keep updating this for you every year. Just want to make sure that you know that they're still not doing very well, and we are. And so we're the yellow line, and our peers are the maroon line, number of employees per 100 FTE students. So we're very efficient. We're very efficient in terms of space, ASU's use of space, square foot assignable space per FTE. You can see all the institutions in Arizona are among the most efficient in this regard than other institutions. This is fundraising. We've altered the fundraising culture of ASU. 2 years ago, FY19, we raised $413 million. Last year, $289 million. This year, so far, $222 million, and we still have another quarter to go within the year. We also just completed what we call our 2020 capital campaign, and you'll see in the upper left, we raised $2.354 billion from 359,699 donors, 213,000 of whom had never given to ASU before. And so we're very excited. 65,000 alumni first-time donor count. Never had that before. 65,000 first-time gifts. And so for every obnoxious letter I get from someone telling me how stupid I am and how stupid we are and how we're the worst institution that the universe has ever created, and there's several letters like that that come, a month or whatever. We did have 65,992 people that went to the school that never had invested before that invested in this campaign. That's a tremendous. You can see all the numbers here. $85 million raised for chairs and professorships, 60 new academic chairs created, 53% increase in those, 75,000 faculty and staff giving, $21.8 million from faculty and staff, 4,747 faculty and staff as unique donors within the donor count. We never had anything like this. 76,441 scholarships. And so back to the Regents as an enterprise, a public enterprise. We are going to the public and to institutions and people and raising philanthropy to advance the institution. This was not the way the institution operated in the past. So, and so this is a fantastic culture change for ASU. And we're not done. This now enables us to know what we can do. So what's it going to take going forward? And what we mean by what is it going to take going forward? What is it going to take to achieve our goals? So, one, we're prepared for our next assignment. Take the beautifully successful, unbelievably physically beautiful, unbelievably socially diverse Arizona and take it to the next level. So where are we suffering? We're suffering with low per capita GDP. We're suffering with high unemployment, particularly among minorities. We're suffering with low educational attainment. We're suffering with a number of things. Okay, great. What are we going to do about it? So ASU going forward is looking to help drive Arizona's economy by launching and helping to launch with the other universities and others, the New Economy Initiative. Frankly, and I speak this painfully to regents, I don't understand why the state's not taking and leveraging investments in the universities to catalyze the expansion and the evolution of the economy. These are small investments. Our request to the governor was for $46 million to do two things: to work on workforce on the left, particularly related to STEM and STEM related things, and to drive forward new science and technology centers. And to all the deans and others that are on the call that aren't from these particular units, this is not us turning away from the humanities or music or art or other areas of the university. This is something that we're trying to be responsive to relative to Arizona. To do that, here's our goal relative to, and I really point you to the second S in the yellow line at the top. The Ira A. Fulton Schools, plural, of engineering. We are the #1 largest and one of the most comprehensive engineering schools in the country. 42 faculty members have been awarded Career Young Investigator multi-million-dollar grants by the government of the United States because of their genius. 50 plus graduate programs, 60 patents a year. You can see all the things that are going on. Unbelievable scale, 8,000 online students, 85 members of national academies and national societies. I think Dean Kyle Squires is on. Kyle, anything you want to say about sort of where we are in the evolution of the the Fulton Schools of Engineering?
So thank you, President Crow. I would want to amplify a couple of points. One is this evolution, meaning rapid growth, producing more engineers and technologists, adding faculty, and then in parallel, cultivating these efforts within the community, and Michael spoke about it, this notion of launching and building the new economy and the New Economy Initiative. That's one of the requests of the state this year. This is the moment in time to do that. That is at the capacity and scale of our schools, plural, again, as President Crow said, we're able to do these things, but the time is now. The time is now for the state to step up and help. We've built the platform. We need that acceleration, but we're ready to do that.
So we're going to be hiring a lot more faculty. We're already #6 in terms of women on our tenure track, tenure faculty. We're going to be expanding that. I'm sure we'll be #1 by the time we're done. The main point here is that we are going to build on multiple campuses the most significant, most advanced, scaled school of engineering ever built in the United States, and that is going to affect the outcome of Phoenix. That's going to affect the outcome of Greater Phoenix, all of Arizona, and the United States. There's going to be hundreds of companies clustered with us beyond those that are already clustered with us. We're going to be the epicenter for the production of new things. We're going to be building 2 new engineering schools, a new advanced manufacturing school that we will headquarter on the Polytechnic campus, and a new school for computing and augmented intelligence that will be headquartered on the Tempe campus. All of those schools will be linked with the humanities. They'll be linked with the social sciences, the behavioral sciences. They'll be supporting the Global Futures Laboratory and all other things that we're doing. So I just want to give you some sense of where we're headed, what it's going to take. We're also looking to launch new science and technology centers that help lay the foundation for new industries. The first 2 that we're going to focus on are advanced manufacturing and advanced materials as they relate to energy and electronic systems. So those are 2 areas that we're going. Here are the areas that we have asked the state to help us to focus on. And I'll just say that these are not areas that we just made up, like just a bunch of pinheads sitting over at, the coffee shop thinking about what we wish we had. These are the areas that we think can lay the foundation, these 5 areas for the future Arizona economy. That future Arizona economy then lays the foundation for us to advance in the arts, advance in culture, advance in social amenities, advance in K-12, because you need these kinds of industries to drive the economy forward. So we're looking at enhancing the creation of high-value jobs, workforce training and development, and we're involved in attraction and retention of leading corporations. And so I don't think Grace Chang is on the call, but Sally, you want to talk about what you've learned about what we're doing in terms of attracting and retaining corporations? Admittedly, Sally's only been on the job for a couple of weeks. What do we have going on the right?
Well, I've been incredibly impressed with what ASU has going on. It's multidimensional. I actually met with Grace O'Sullivan just recently, and the number of partnerships is incredible. As you have mentioned, microelectronics is very much top and center in thinking about partnering with industries and bringing them to this area. And maybe Dean Squires, you might want to say a little bit more on that point and the partnerships we have.
In fact, I appreciate that, Sally. Kyle, if you could talk about, people want to know, so you're hearing about the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company moving its multi-billion-dollar manufacturing center here, their entire supply chain here. But Kyle, just talk about how we were involved in that, and then what that means relative to future research activities. I just want to give Regents a sense. I guess what I can say, let me just back up, and Regent Schutman will laugh. I can't see his face, but I know he'll laugh when I say this. You ain't seen nothing yet. We are just getting started on all of these dimensions. We are just now able to play at a level we could never play before. So Kyle, what are we doing in this electronics space?
So TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, is a good example. So when corporations, and TSMC is a global leader in semiconductors, part of their calculus, that is their process when they're considering expansion, relocation of headquarters, whatever the case might be, we're part of that conversation. Why? Because the access to talent, that's always going to be a need, access to ideas from the faculty, and increasingly, as COVID has taught us, access to workforce training, to be able to nimbly sort of reskill and move their workforce along. At that scale, at the level of a TSMC, with the level of investment and the level of technology that they're bringing to the Valley, it then catalyzes other opportunities that are gaining national attention. In particular, around semiconductor manufacturing and research, securing the supply chain and doing a lot of those things that normally happen around the world, doing more of them in the US. We're able to basically advance those conversations and lead them because of partnerships with TSMC and because of what the university's done to, again, build a very scaled model of our schools.
So Kyle, if we win the things that we're going to pursue, or Sally, so there's two targets that we have. There's a part of the CHIPS Act, distributed national new assets in advanced manufacturing oriented research related to microelectronics. And then there's something else. What's the scale of the things that we're pursuing and hope to win with these new companies that are coming here? There's an additional American government and American corporate investment in these things. What are we looking at?
So very quickly, back in the summer, when legislation was moving across the federal level, the CHIPS Act, very prominent piece of legislation that ended up getting authorized as part of the National Defense Authorization Act. There's language in that legislation that's now going through appropriations to fund a national network to advance semiconductor research and manufacturing. The overall level of investment should be north of $1 billion. That's to be worked out. But that would mean really significant investments within the state. All those details to be worked out. We're in the middle of it, but you get a sense of the magnitude.
But back to our $1 billion research number, we could generate 50 million a year from this activity moving forward. And then there's another target. So Sally has a new assignment that I know she's concentrated on. I know she's even doing some quarterback shifts here and changing the line, to move forward against a target at the Commerce Department. Sally, just talk a little bit about, you use a phrase from your experience in the private sector at RAND and at Research Triangle Institute. What is this whole thing about capture? How do you capture?
Well, we talk about capturing opportunities, particularly in the federal space. We want to be out in front of those opportunities. So when a proposal is publicly available, we are already poised to respond very, very quickly. And I think that agility is something that ASU does so well. But even beyond that, we want to be part of the conversation in DC about what direction should be taken in federal research. And I think Dean Squires and his colleagues have really done an excellent job in helping shape and really advise the nation on where investment should be in science, technology, and engineering. So again, for me as an outsider, the structure of ASU, the philosophy, the commitment, the energy, and the nimbleness allow us to really be players on the national and the global stage on important research topics.
Thank you. So as I said, what do we need? So we are in the middle of one of the most significant innovative moments in higher education history, and ASU now is advancing in all of these 5 realms or 4 realms of learning. The 5th one, the green one, we're still working on. And so the thing I wanted to point out here is, starting at the left, full immersion campus immersion, full immersion on-campus technology enhanced learning. That's the on-campus experience for fully immersive students. That's not going away. It's likely to change and adapt. Technology enhanced is really, really important. And now we've added this new realm 1B. So regents can anticipate a digital, what we call campus synchronized full immersion, whole new degrees, new ways of teaching and learning and so forth. And then you can see what technologies we're looking for at the bottom. So we have over 60 companies that we're working with in new technologies, over 200 companies that we're working with existing technologies. And you can see what we're looking for: intelligent tutoring platform, personalized learning at scale. We have a lot going on there. Artificial intelligence-based advising, lots going on there. When these things are done, back to Regent Duval's earlier comment, we think we can dramatically impact all things in Arizona at the K-12 level, at the lifelong learning level, at the universal learner level, and so forth and so on. Now, going forward, digital immersion, online technology enhanced. What are we looking for there? We're looking for the second item, integrated human tutor interfaces. So we know that purely online immersion is less successful than when you have an integrated human tutor interface. We're looking to build development-based assessments. And so the point I'm trying to make here with Regents is that your Arizona State University public enterprise institution is also its own R&D center. Now, we're not doing R&D for other people. We're doing R&D for ourselves. We're doing R&D to enhance our learning outcomes, to educate more people, to overcome things. So realm 4, what we call education through exploration. The things that we've been doing with the Dreamscape Immersive Corporation, what we call under the needs, virtual augmented reality for learning, direct human cognition linkages, group learning tools. We have one of the largest research and development projects ever undertaken by this institution, funded both internally and through philanthropy and ultimately by other means, to make that realm 4 work. And so the thing going forward from Regents is that we're going to be operating across all of these realms. But the realm that people spend the most time thinking about is that far gray one on the left. We believe that as we move into these other realms, I've said this to Regents before, but let me say again, there's probably an opportunity for all or nearly all of our students in realm 1 to be a part of delivering the services for realm 2, 3, 4, and 5. That is working, perhaps with no tuition. So imagine then a transformation of the enterprise where the core of the enterprise is around realm 1 and realm 1B, and the rest of the enterprise is working as a function of that core. Now, to the last meaningful slide.
President Crow, you have a
Yes.
question or comment from Regent Mata?
Regent Mata, yes.
Thank you, Chair Penley, and thank you, President Crow. If you go back to the previous slides about the previous slide, and this has to do with Sally Morton.
Yes.
This is in reference to attraction and retention of leading corporations. But Sally, you mentioned that you are starting to capture some of the RFPs. Some of those RFPs already have incumbent. So in order to get the intel, I call it the intel, have you tried to do some partnerships with those incumbents so that you can, get ahead of the future incoming of the recompete? Or sometimes the government asks, especially the federal government asks for what, how can industry help to shape that RFP through industry days or through different RFIs? Because the federal government is really unique. You can't talk to them openly. So sometimes you have to go through so many protocols, and sometimes the incumbent who has the intel, could be a good partnership. So how are you developing that?
That's a wonderful point, Regent Mata. Thank you for bringing it up. Again, being new to the university, I'm not as cognizant of all the efforts in this regard, but all the points that you make are good ones. Going back to the microelectronics example, again, saying that Dean Squires has done a wonderful work in partnering both with other institutions, other universities, as well as private partnerships. So you have to do all those things. You have to be very aware if there is an incumbent, who it is, what their strengths are, how you might either compete with them or indeed partner with them. We need to work on all of that. So you make wonderful points. Thank you.
So Regent Mata, I would just add that, we operate at several levels. So we have faculty, individual faculty pursuing research opportunities. We have groups of faculty pursuing center type opportunities. We have coalitions of faculty, both here and other schools, pursuing even larger opportunities. And then we do have partner and partnering mechanisms that we're working on in Washington and so forth. And we also have a mechanism within our enterprise partnership portfolio, an entity called ASURE, the ASU Research Enterprise, ASSURE, which then allows us to contract in certain kinds of ways. And so we have multiple, in a sense, pursuit vehicles. And so we're working on all of that, and we could give you a deeper dive into all of that if that would be interesting to you, because I'd love to hear from your own business experience, some of your insights and perspectives to help us to win more, because that's really what it's about. So turning Chairman Penley to this chart, and I want Regents to look at this chart. So this is ASU gross revenues, FY21, the year we are in. This is for the enterprise. 22, $400 million increase. 23, another hundreds of millions of dollar increase. So to attain our goals and objectives, we believe in the next 5 years, we have to find a way to generate several billion dollars of additional revenue to achieve our goals. Now, we could change our goals and we wouldn't need all that revenue, but I want the Regents to fully understand the mission in front of the leadership team here, which is first and foremost to achieve our objectives: numbers of graduates, diversity of graduates, amount of research activity, impact, K-12, all the things we're trying to do, and to realize that the black line at the bottom is not going to pay for all of that. Other resources are going to pay for all of that. And so the key point here is going forward is that we're very excited about our goals and objectives, and we're very humbled by the challenge. Through COVID, through whatever we have to find the resources, which we are doing. And then looking back on 21, you can see that federal fiscal stabilization number, which may have some resources in fiscal year 22 also. But you can see that we operate in markets against competition for all of these resources. And so then that means then that markets, other activities are unbelievably important. And so I think what I will do there is if we can drop the slides, Martin. Mr. Chairman, let me just close and open it up to you for comments and questions in the remaining 30 minutes, which I hope is enough time to get enough of the questions. So ASU is functioning, operational, advancing during the pandemic, advancing with the pandemic. We have a great team of leaders. We have a brand new team of executive vice presidents coming online who will all be ready. Regents often ask me, for those of you on University Council, what happens when you croak? And so I say, not to worry. We have a fantastic team, and that's increasingly so. Increasingly so. We have fantastic leaders, fantastic structures, fantastic mechanisms. I'm very happy with where things are going and where we're headed. I do see Amy Ostrom here. I want to point out Amy Ostrom, the new interim dean of the W.P. Carey School of Business. Amy, wave to everybody. And so she may be the first intergenerational executive at ASU, because her dad, Lonnie Ostrom, used to be the president of the ASU Foundation. So Amy, great to see you there. Appreciate you being here today. And thank you for taking on the role, in addition to all the other roles that you've got going on. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you, and I hope that there are comments or questions, and I'll call on different officers as needed as the questions arise. So.
Thank you very much, President Crow. As always, this sort of presentation is very helpful to the board to understand both the enormous accomplishments that are represented by ASU, but also to see the challenges, particularly the financial ones that lie ahead for the university. I believe Regent Ridenour has a comment or question. Regent Ridenour.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And one of the slides that we just passed by, the revenue slide, kind of answers some of my questions. But Dr. Crow, what do you think this presentation will look like in 5 years from now? And where are the greatest opportunities and where are the greatest challenges?
Well, thank you, Regent Ridenour. I'll give a comment, and then I'll call on a couple of my colleagues to comment also. So I believe that we've successfully traversed the culture change challenge. ASU is a new culture. We're moving forward. I believe that we're able to operate as an enterprise, and we wouldn't have been able to operate as an enterprise 10 years ago. It just wasn't in us. It wasn't in our DNA. It wasn't in our evolution. And so 5 years from now, I have a high degree of confidence that we would be reporting back to the regents continued progress. I think to Regent Duval's point, I think by then we will have more deeply impacted the flow of students from Arizona at all levels and educating. We haven't talked about all of the other things that we're doing, but I think that we would be able to demonstrate substantial improvement through our partnerships in high school graduation rates, college going rates, college success rates. I think that we'll be able to report meaningful impact in economic development outcomes. I believe that we'd be able to report that all of our academic units were in the upper 5% of quality and reputation and status and so forth and so on. I think we can talk about that. I think the university will be much more socially mature within 5 years. We'll have a much more diverse faculty. We already have a very diverse student body, a much more diverse executive team, meaning that the university will continue to evolve, to draw in talent and perspective and background from all of the multiple elements of our complex society that we're working to drive forward. So I think we'll see that and have that. I think that we will have greatly accelerated our innovativeness in teaching and learning, that we will see a quantum improvement in 4 years graduation rates, 6-year graduation rates. I think that we will be able to reach many more learners. I think that we're looking at really fleshing out the Polytechnic campus and the West campuses as two physical full immersion campuses to a much larger scale, more than 10,000 students on each campus. So we're looking at that as an outcome. I'll just call on members of the University Executive Committee who would like to add anything to that and just introduce it. I'll pick on someone I haven't picked on yet. I'll pick on Jim O'Brien, Senior Vice President for University Affairs and University Chief of Staff. And he's probably dropped off talking to someone for some fire that's under control. But Jim,
no, I'm here, President Crow, and so
all right. So what do you think?
I think 5 years from now, it maybe goes back to the beginning, where I think we're talking about an anti-fragile kind of university, and so I think we'll make progress in that regard. And I can think of 3 areas, and you've mentioned them already, but I would just highlight them. And that is, in the end, the university advances and becomes anti-fragile to the talent we acquire. So I think increased, just greater talent, and then evolution in the structure in which that talent is organized to just get work done. I think second, I think you'll see more partnerships. And so partnerships have just been at the heart of advancing the institution, acquiring resources. So I think 5 years from now, that slide with all those logos on it will be much bigger. There'll be more and more partnerships. And finally, I think 5 years from now, what you'll see is just the impact, those numbers on learners, graduation rate among degree-seeking students, and the global scale of ASU, I think will be even more prominent as we
so on that last point, we think there is, it turns out people have heard of Harvard University around the world. And it turns out that they've heard of MIT around the world, and that has made Boston a fantastic place. It turns out more people are hearing about us. And it turns out that if we can do that on a global scale, that's going to be meaningful socially, culturally, and economically for Arizona. I think somebody else was going to say something from the executive committee before I called on Jim.
It's Rich Stanley. So one comment on Jim's partnerships is I think that we are going to see a people have been predicting a shakeout in the higher education community for some time now. I think that COVID is going to be one of the triggers of that. And I think the partnerships are going to start to be as much with other institutions that are trying to find ways to preserve resources without closing down. We've already got some activities going on through Ed Plus to help other systems to think about how they will deal with online education. And there's probably the opportunities for shared teaching and that will come from things like ASU Sync and ASU Online are going to be a significant piece of how the university interacts with the world in the future.
Well, let me just add to Regent Ridenauer's question. I'm going to pick on someone that didn't think I was going to call on her because I can see her, Ann Jones, a fantastic ASU professor who's being onboarded as vice provost. So you're coming on. You're going to serve for a number of years in this role before other roles become available, et cetera. And so what are you going to try to do in 5 years, Ann? What is it that you hope to focus on? And just, by the way, just introduce yourself. Tell them what kind of professor you are.
Thank you, President Crow. And thank you to the Regents. My name is Ann Jones, and I'm a professor of chemistry and biochemistry here at ASU, as well as working now in the provost's office. You've posed an excellent question to try to look into a crystal ball and think about what happens in 5 years. I think that the beauty of universities is we don't know the answer, but we have the tools. And so we have to continue as a university to create and provide to the entire community, scholars, students, community members, the tools of education to answer the questions that come up 5 years from now. And so my answer to President Crow's question is that 5 years from now, we will be giving more members of the community equitably and effectively the tools to use education to solve problems.
All right, I'm going to call on Pardis Mahdavi, who's a new dean at ASU. So Pardis, where did you come from before you came here? And what in your deanship, let's pretend it's 5 years, what are you going to be able to do as a dean? Just run the railroads and sign the papers and, you know, give out little prizes at the end of the year? What else can you do?
Thank you so much, President Crow, and thank you to the Regents. My name is Pardis Mahdavi, and I am the Dean of Social Sciences here at ASU. Prior to joining ASU, I was the Dean of the Corbell School of International Studies at the University of Denver. And prior to that, Dean at Pomona College. So, but I've never felt anywhere as at home as I do at ASU. You know, if to answer to your question, you know, President Crow, if 2020 has showed us anything, it's that there is an absolute confluence and nexus between climate emergencies, health justice, and social and racial justice. And I think we in universities, especially we at ASU, are incredibly well positioned to think about how higher education can help us solve some of these world's most pressing problems. And that's the work that we're doing, right? Higher education is absolutely in a moment of transformation. We've created new frameworks like JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and we're pushing interdisciplinary approaches to solve these problems by doing things like creating new degrees, new research programs, and bringing on new all-star faculty and leaders to run some of our most innovative centers and programs. So it's an exciting moment. It's a challenging moment in the world, but ASU is perfectly positioned to address these challenges.
So just to close this question, Regent Ridenauer, and that is that I think that what one can expect in 5 years is the further emergence of ASU as what we've been talking about for a long period of time, this new thing, this new kind of American National Service University that grew up in Arizona. And let me add to the Regents and to others that are watching, this is not to take away anything from any other institution. Our sisters that are nearby living with us at NAU and at the U of A, other universities around the country, far from it. The entire sector is so inadequate to the challenge, so underpowered for what it is that we have to do. We have problems to solve, people to educate, lives to advance, speed to accelerate. So to Regent Ridenauer, what I can tell you is that we'll be better than we are now by a long shot, particularly if we can find the resources along the way. So back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, President Crow. Regent Schupman has a question.
President Crow, the presentation is energizing for an old ASU grad. My only regret is I was born far too early. I would love to be a student at ASU today. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I do want to ask a question about structure. I understand all the rest of this. You've been very clear about how you're moving. Your structure has evolved during my 7 years as a regent, and it's becoming more coherent for me. But I was interested in seeing that your engagement around the world does not include formal campuses in a long-range plan, but rather partnerships. Is that the path that you see as most effective to engage around the world through partnerships, or do you ever see ASU campuses on foreign lands?
General Shootman, ASU staff may not know that Regent Shootman is General Shootman, U.S. Air Force, retired. And so he's asking a very important question. And so what I can say is Jim O'Brien and I years ago were in the United Arab Emirates, and we noticed all the hulking empty campuses of abandoned buildings of international universities in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, mostly Canadian and Australian and New Zealand. And we're like, what happened here? so I sort of drew up this notion as we were going to think about globalization, where I tried to imagine how could we advance where that wouldn't happen. And we've got a lot of complex projects out there. Most of them will do very well. Some of them will do okay, and some of them won't make it. But with maybe one fraction of one exception, rented facilities, we don't want to get into the business of building campuses and so forth and so on. So I'm going to let Jim just comment on that assessment. And I'm going to turn to Stephanie Furman, who's our Senior Vice President managing our global interactions, which we're doing through partnerships. And then Jim, if you can just give 30 seconds, and Stephanie, if you could just give 30 seconds as to our general approach. So Jim.
Sure. So Regent Shootman, I think one of the design imperatives of ASU is to be global. But as we do that, the challenge is to be global and manage risk. And part of managing risk is just the recognition that we don't have capital sufficient to build campuses, buildings in international locations. And so we have instead talent and students and energy that we can bring to those places internationally, and technology through like online education. So what we want to do is take the assets that we have and deploy them globally to extend the reach of the institution, but do it in a way where we can manage the risk and capital investment. The best way to do that, the preferred way to do that, would be not for ASU to build a campus in the way that Yale or Duke may have done, but instead find partners who have capital and who can actually take much of the risk for us, and instead mix in this tremendous set of assets we have and provide those opportunities to students and faculty in the state of Arizona to be engaged globally, but in perhaps a more responsible way than just picking one or two places and building some buildings over there.
So Stephanie Lindquist, Senior Vice President of the University, first describe your job. So Stephanie's been a dean at the University of Georgia, a dean at the University of Texas. She's now taking over this really complicated area for us. So Stephanie, what are we doing?
Thank you, President Crow. Regent Shootman, we're very much engaged in a program of developing kind of a network of universities around the world where we can force multiply. Universities are the globe's think tanks, and they should be interconnected in such a way that they can advance in areas where the global problems really do require collaboration across national boundaries. And so if we go in as a single institution and build a campus, it first of all feels a little imperial. If we go in instead as a partner to either an institution in the country or multiple institutions in a particular country or region, we can be far more effective. We can build a force multiplier strategy that calls upon all sectors in that region to develop research, academic programs, et cetera, that not only advance interests in that country, but of course, also advance ASU and Arizona's interests, because many of these partnerships will bring back students to Arizona and further internationalize our campus. So the partnership model is far more effective because it's more cost effective, but it also enables us to integrate into these communities more effectively and link them back to Arizona.
Stephanie, I appreciate your answer. That really parallels my experience in the Air Force. partnership development proved to be far more effective for the United States in building allies than putting down buildings and being the imperial visitor. So I do salute this decision and approach. Thank you, Dr. Crow. That was very interesting for me.
Thank you, Regent. Mr. Chairman.
President Crow, could you address the increase in research expenditures? And I'm not sure which of your group you'd like to call on, but as a part of that, I'd certainly appreciate hearing from Dean Squires as well as Vice President Morton on the strategies that they see necessary to have that delta that you described.
Right. So let me give one comment, then I'm going to, just because Sally has just joined us, I'm going to turn to Neil Woodbury, who's our Vice President for Research, reporting to Sally as Executive Vice President for the Knowledge Enterprise. And Neil is also our Chief Science and Technology Officer, and then Sally can follow on to Neil. Our basic strategy remains one in which the play that we've called is empowerment of our individual faculty and the acquisition of world-class faculty in all of our units, and then empowering them to do research. The assemblage of those faculty into teams and so forth. And then the building, in fact, we have Peter Schlosser on this call also, I might call on Peter, the building of mega opportunities for us, that is taking on really huge problems. So for instance, our Global Futures Laboratory, which Peter Schlosser is leading, is the rough equivalent of the early stages of the first medical center for the earth, as opposed to a medical center for human health. Multiple schools, multiple research institutes, multiple activities, and Peter's launching that. So Neil, if you could give just a minute on our basic approach for research enhancement, then Sally comment on that, and then I'm going to turn to Peter, if that's all right, Mr. Chairman. So Neil.
So thanks very much, President Crow. So I think that our approach is really based on the approach of ASU, and ASU has long been an extremely interdisciplinary school, bringing people together from a variety of different disciplines to solve problems. That's nowhere been as evident in the last year or so as we face challenges, new challenges with COVID and related things, and brought people together rapidly to build new research programs, build new opportunities, build new ways of doing things. That's resulted in $80 million worth of new research activity simply in that area in the last year. The other thing, though, is if you look at what this pandemic and related things have done, they've created a whole new set of opportunities for universities to jump into. If you look at the distributed manufacturing, if you look at the changes in the way our healthcare system is working now, so much online, over telehealth, over digital health, et cetera. The incorporation of AI, the incorporation of VR, the whole augmented reality business. Then if you look at things like going out into space, it's no longer just exploration. Exploration is certainly a big part of it. It's now become a business. It's part of what our economy is going forward, and our ability to take what we've learned in terms of space exploration and apply that and create that for the Air Force, for Space Force, for our many industrial partners in that area. So
the only thing I would add to that before turning to Sally, and we're using these as examples, is that the other mark that we have of differentiation is that in all the things that we're doing, we're looking to cross between engineering to the humanities, or sustainability to the arts, business connecting to this, business connecting to that. And so that's another hallmark of what we're trying to do. So Sally, just in very short form, anything you would like to add to that? And then Peter, I want you to describe what the Global Futures Laboratory is doing. So this goes to the heart of the question of how we're looking to greatly expand our research activities. So Sally first.
Sure. I would say, just to add on to Neil, that the structure of ASU allows this type of transdisciplinary work. And it all rests on the excellence of the people, which you heard about earlier as well from Dr. Gonzalez, for example, that we're able to attract and retain. But the new structure with the three enterprises allows a suite of products, if you will, particularly with partners. A good example there is, say, the Starbucks relationship. That structure, which is novel, in the university setting allows this sort of combination of skills and agility to move. So it's a structure, but it isn't rigid. I think that's the beauty of ASU. And I think the Global Futures Lab, which Peter will talk about now, is such an excellent example of the implementation of that structure.
So Peter Schlosser is University Vice President for Global Futures Laboratory. He's also Vice Provost for the program-related academic activities associated with that in the College of Global Futures and the 3 schools that are a part of that. And he's building this program. We hired Peter from his role as the Deputy Director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University, where he was also a chaired professor in multiple units. And so, Peter, what's the heart of what you're doing? And then segue back to Sally. What's the center we're going to get going in the Global Futures Laboratory related to Starbucks, just as an example? So Peter Schlosser.
Thank you, President Crow. So what the Global Futures Laboratory actually is the world's most advanced entity in academia to address in a holistic fashion the future of the planet. So in order to do that, we really have to draw on 2 things. One is the long history of ASU in engaging in thinking about sustainability, in thinking about the future of the planet. But also we have to draw from all the excellent units across the university, because we actually need input, not just from the natural sciences, from engineering, from medical sciences, but very importantly from the social science and humanities, because one of the core questions in looking at the future is what I would shorthand the societal will to take our inventions, our ideas about what technologies are needed to keep the planet on a trajectory that leads us to a safe space, from a trajectory that right now is actually going to an unsafe operating space. We have to understand how these technologies are actually taken up and what can we do to understand people's decision-making, to get them to understand that making different choices is not sacrificing the future, but actually creates a lot of opportunity. So while we are looking at urgency, while we are looking at problems, while we are looking at solving these problems, we are also looking at what opportunities are coming with that, what kind of new industries are coming with it, what kind of jobs are coming with these industries. And there are several that are very obvious that are in the $1 trillion level industries. So coming back then to the relationship that we have in that structure, and Michael already mentioned, it has a research institute with 30 centers, it has a college with 3 schools, it has a solution service, it has an engagement space. But just one example, the engagement with Starbucks, many companies now, and Starbucks is one example, are looking actually for these solutions. They're looking for what some of them call pathways to a planet positive future. And so we are engaging with them very tightly, expanding on our relationship on the educational side to help them figure out what they can do to stay on a track that is positive for the planet, positive for people, but also stays positive for their profit. Because if we are not looking at the economic possibilities in our advancement of our engagement with respect to the future of the planet, then we are losing a big part of the societal structures.
So we're in, this is just one example of dozens and dozens of examples. So we're going to help a company continue to be unbelievably financially successful, which they are for their shareholders and their employees, but also no net negative impact on the planet from any of their supply chain or any of their operations, as well as we're their partner in people positive, which means then helping their employees to be developed as human beings, which means, you know, educating tens of thousands of their employees on a range of things. So, Mr. Chairman, the approach that we have, I tried to give you all layers of the approach, is acquisition of fantastic faculty into fantastic programs, the elimination of barriers between faculty members so they can move back and forth, and the facilitation of the assemblage of structures and superstructures and superstructures involving other partners to really work on the most important problems that are out there. And this last point relative to Peter, we decided a long time ago not to build a medical school, but to partner with medical schools or to align with medical schools in new and unique ways, or to work with medical schools in new ways. We're building this medical center for the earth. That's where we're making this as a hallmark thing for the university. We think that this, among many other things, is going to take off. So back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, President Crow. Regents, we're almost out of time. Is there a final question that one of you has? If not, we're going to break here and return at 12:30 p.m. And we'll return in executive session. So Regents, remember you need to sign on again in the executive session area. President Crow, I just want to thank you and thank all of the individuals at ASU who participated this morning. It is an enormous accomplishment, as I said earlier, and I just laud every step of the way. I recognize that considerable more funding would help from the state. All of us on the board would like to figure out a way to provide that for you and to encourage our legislature and governor to do so. We appreciate very much the extent to which ASU has really moved forward in thinking about the future and what we're going to need. I think, Peter, your comments just now were especially important, as President Crow indicated, for how you're going to achieve what you want. The extent to which you have integrated digital learning and digital support mechanisms into the learning process is an extraordinary and very much, I think, a demonstration to universities across the globe as to what they could do. So if there's a final comment, President Crow, I leave it to you to make it.
My only comment is I appreciate the Regents' forbearance in listening to a really quick, very complicated presentation. We'd be happy with individual regents or groups of regents to meet and give more detailed insights or perspectives. And I just want to thank the ASU team for being here. And as I said to you, I didn't say I was going to call on anybody. I just said I might call on some people. So I appreciate also everybody being able to respond. So thank you.
Thanks very much, folks. Remember, 12:30 p.m. sharp executive session. Goodbye, everyone. Very much, Suzanne. Good afternoon to everyone. We are reconvened as the Arizona Board of Regents in public session. I'm very happy at this point and very pleased to report that we've really had an excellent pool of prospects for the NAU presidency. It has been superb. Been able to review a lot of prospects through a process that has been complicated, but has moved along reasonably swiftly, I think. And as a part of that, I want to offer my appreciation to a set of individuals along the way, starting with Regent Manson and Regent Duvall, who have co-chaired this search. Both have just spent innumerable hours in really working through a process that has led us to this particular point on a Friday afternoon. So I offer to both of you my sincerest appreciation. To the Search Advisory Committee at Northern Arizona University, I just can't say how much, based on, and you know I've not participated with you search committee members, but how much I've heard about how hard you've worked, how much time you've given, how diligent you've been in reviewing prospects, considering individuals to recommend to this board as final candidates. And finally, to our executive director, John Arnold, to Chad Sampson, to our general counsel, Jennifer Pollack, to our other legal counsel in the staff, including Nancy Tribensey and Samantha Blevins. I offer all of you appreciation as well, because you don't make it through these searches successfully without some darn good legal advice along the way. We're fortunate on our staff to have experienced individuals who've really made a difference in the success of this search. It's not a surprise that we've had good prospects along the way, because the opportunity to really make an impact on Northern Arizona University lies ahead. It is an opportunity that I think any individual who would like to be a president would want to have. So I think that's the reason we have such good prospects along the way. At this particular stage, I have a motion I'd like to bring to the members of the board, and it is the following. I move that the board proceed as discussed in executive session regarding the next steps for Northern Arizona University search process, including inviting individuals for interview with the board. Do I have a second?
Second.
I do have a second from one of the co-chairs. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? And I've learned to go slower in this meeting because I'll miss the noes or the abstentions. But the motion does pass. It appears to pass unanimously among those regents who are here with us this afternoon in voting, and we do have a quorum. This has been a busy meeting, a long meeting, but it's been a good meeting in very many ways, both in terms of moving forward our agenda with the general education changes that we've made, a challenging issue for a board, a challenging issue for faculties, for provosts, and for presidents. It's also been a good meeting as we've focused once again on our legislative agenda, which really is the New Economy Initiative, something that matters in terms of having a qualified workforce in our state, something that matters in assuring a pathway for all individuals in Arizona to get a college degree. And that's the Promise Scholarship that's a part of the New Economy Initiative that goes beyond just funding the kind of workforce that we really need from these three universities. It's also been a very good meeting in terms of our operational and financial review with Arizona State University. President Crow and his colleagues shared excellent discussion with us, good information that we needed, responded to our questions in a very successful way. It's a reminder that this process that we've developed for the three universities, dealing with each one of them individually, has been of value to all of us on the board. And I certainly hope it's been of value to the public as well, as you've heard the detail of that. Unless there's a comment from our executive director or one of our regents, we are nearly at an end. John Arnold, comments?
Sir, I think we are at the end.
Thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands raised of any kind. So I'm going to say, I hope all of you have a good evening, a good weekend. By all means, stay healthy, follow the practices that we've listened to over and over. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.